Well, this week we continue looking at the place P in the 4 Ps, distribution as we call it. And we're going to look specifically at retailing. Now we'll also talk this week about services marketing, where the thing we are selling is intangible, and about idea, people, and place marketing. You know, retailing is the final stop on the distribution path, the process by which goods and services are sold to the consumer for their personal use. Retailers belong to a channel of distribution providing time, place, and ownership utility to customers. Those are concepts you'll want to read more about and be ready to discuss. Let's talk about a few quick facts. These are a little bit dated but still pretty relevant. Retailing is big business. In 2013, U.S. retail sales totaled $4.53 trillion. E-commerce accounted for 16.9%, or over $263 billion of that, and M-commerce, or mobile commerce, accounted for $42.13 billion. Now in 2015, that grew to $300 billion for e-commerce. There's over 1 million retail businesses that employ 15.3 million workers. You may be one of those that is either working in a retail setting, or perhaps like me, you've done so in your past. More than 1 of every 10 U.S. workers works in retail. Now, retail is evolving. It's always evolved. It's taken a lot of different forms. In the very beginning, it might have been a booth being sold in a village, a booth set up in a village to sell products, or a peddler moving from town to town on a horse-drawn cart, all the way up to the really fancy department stores and malls that we're accustomed to today. As the economic and social norms and cultural climates change, different retail types emerge. Often these squeeze out older, outdated models of retail. And this leads us to what we call the wheel of retailing hypothesis. This helps to explain how retail firms change, how they become more upscale as they go through their life cycle. In the entry phase of the wheel of retailing, new types of retailers enter the market by offering lower priced goods with little focus on additional services or on the facility itself. And then we move to the trading up phase, and that's where these retailers gradually improve their facilities, the quality and the assortment of their merchandise, and the amenities, and they also increase prices. In the vulnerability phase, retailers move up to a high-end strategy with superior facilities, desirable amenities like, for example, free gift wrapping. But with that comes higher operating costs and, of course, usually higher prices. However, when they do this leaves them vulnerable to the entry of new competitors who undercut their price or offer limited services as we just see the cycle start all over again. Trading up or upgrading too quickly can spell disaster for a retailer. Now, of course, some retailers never trade up. Instead, they just choose to continue to operate in a niche like discounters, or other retailers strategically choose to begin their life as upscale specialty stores from the very beginning. So what's in store for the future for retailing? Well, there's 4 factors that motivate innovative merchants to reinvent the way they do business. The first is changes in economic conditions. We'll discuss each of these. Demographics and cultural changes tend to affect things. Technology is a big factor. Globalization, as we've discussed before. And let's look at some of these. The economy is one of the biggest areas. You know, not too long ago, in 2008 through 2010, we had a dramatic economic downturn, really worldwide, that drastically affected the retail environment. Consumers around the world lost what we call consumer confidence, and they became less willing to spend their discretionary income. The Consumer Confidence Index is an economic measure that reflects consumers' optimism in a given country about their personal financial situation and also the state of the economy as a whole. So just as an example, in January of 2008, the U.S. consumer confidence was high, hovering just under 90. That was what the confidence index showed. But immediately began this steep decline, dropping approximately 20 points by July of that same year. Consumer confidence dropped further down to below 25 in the first quarter of 2009, but then it gradually started to climb throughout the remainder of 2009 and 2010, finally getting past 60 in February of 2011. This caused many consumers to minimize their spending of their discretionary income and focus instead on things like lowering their personal debt level and increasing their savings. Good things, but bad things for retailers. So during economic downturns, many retailers choose to take a different kind of strategy. They might use sales or promotions and free shipping to try to attract price-conscious consumers. Obviously, it impacts where we shop. It can be very good times during those economic downturns for discounters, but not so good for the more upscale stores. Others change their merchandise assortment to better meet consumers' needs. Sales of private label brands, for example, reached an all-time high in 2009. Now, changes in demographics in a given geography also affect retailing. For example, think about how the rise of dual career families has affected retailing. Give that some thought, and we'll discuss that in class. Ethnic diversity also has an impact. Larger firms have started to realize that they have to recognize and celebrate ethnic diversity specific to the cultural makeup of the areas in which they operate, perhaps with special festivals or sales on special kinds of products. Technology has a big impact on retail success, and this is where I spent a lot of my career, of course, working with companies like Walmart. Stores may use point-of-sale systems to create a perpetual inventory unit control system. So when you go to Lowe's and you buy a power drill and a bunch of screws and bolts, and they're scanned there at the cash register or point-of-sale terminal, that information goes back into that perpetual inventory control system, sends a signal, we've got one less power drill on the shelf. When the inventory count goes down to a certain level, an automatic order can go out to ship more in very short time. The store of the future is also going to use a technology called RFID, or radio frequency identification tags, and other kinds of technology to assist the shopper in ways that we haven't even thought of. For example, an RFID tag on a bottle of wine could tip off a nearby plasma screen that you happen to be pushing your cart by that will put up an ad for pasta, and it might even spit out a little coupon for a neat recipe with a recipe on it for fettuccine, or maybe even send it to your smartphone. So think about some of the ways that technology can help enhance what we do on the retail side, and we'll discuss that more in class. One of the biggest factors that's affecting the future of retailing is globalization. Retailers are busy expanding to other countries, and they bring with them innovations and new management philosophies. Think about this on the retail food side. McDonald's, TGI Fridays, Starbucks, and the Hard Rock Cafe are real global success stories for U.S. retailers in the food space. And then on the flip side, going in the other direction, Swedish home goods company IKEA, that you're probably very familiar with, furnishes rooms around the world and has become very big in the United States. Still, retailers have to be ready to adjust to the different conditions around the world. That could be as simple as menu changes, or it could be having to do with what kinds of products are offered or the way that they're promoted inside the store. Some countries require that certain percentages, often over half of the goods sold in retail stores, need to be locally produced. So that puts a burden on the retailer to make sure that their assortment is meeting that percentage. Have you ever heard of the term retailtainment? It's all about marketing strategies that enhance the shopping experience. Many consumers today are seeking fun while they shop, and retailers are starting to recognize that there's really a theater aspect to what they do. Shoppers could be thought of as the audience that needs to be entertained, while the store design kind of serves as the stage. Then you bring salespeople into the mix, would be the equivalent of actors in retail, and so now the scene is set. So what are some ways that you could create retailtainment for a particular kind of retailer? Be ready to do some brainstorming on that on our Critical Thinking Friday session. Now let's get into another way that we look at retailers, and that's by classify them by merchandise selection. And we've got a couple of different axes here. One is the merchandise depth, the other is the merchandise breadth. Across the bottom is the breadth. That you could also think of that as the variety. This is the number of different product lines or categories that are available. With a narrow assortment, such as we encounter in convenience stores, this means that shoppers will find only a limited selection of product lines, such as candy, cigarettes, soft drinks. You're familiar with this with a Quick Trip or 7-Eleven type of store. A broad assortment, such as what you'd have in a warehouse club like Costco or Sam's Club, means there's a wide range of items from eyeglasses all the way to barbecue grills. I even heard Costco had sold coffins at one point. Merchandise depth has to do with the variety of choices that are available within each specific category. When you have a shallow assortment, that means that the selection within a product category is limited. So a factory outlet store, for example, may sell only white and blue men's dress shirts, all by the same manufacturer and all in some standard set of sizes. In contrast, a men's specialty store may feature a deep assortment of dress shirts, like you see here in this legendaryheroes.com, but not very much else in varying shades and some hard-to-find sizes. And then, of course, you have your category that is both broad and deep with super retailers like Amazon, where you can basically find anything that you want. Now, retailers also differ in the amount of service that they provide for consumers. Now, you know this from your personal experience as a shopper. There are trade-offs. While a higher level of service will probably increase customer satisfaction, may even increase your sales, it comes at a cost. Retailers have to decide what they can afford and what makes sense for their position in the market and for the particular products that they're going to sell. I'd be interested in hearing what your service experience has been at different retailers. Which ones provide great service? Which ones might have low prices but don't provide such good service? Now, what do you think of when you think of non-store retailing? You probably think of e-commerce. However, non-store retailing is really any method a firm uses to complete an exchange that doesn't require a customer to visit a store. And so you see these categories here. Direct selling occurs when a salesperson presents a product to an individual or a small group. They take orders and they might actually deliver the merchandise. Let's look at some of the kinds of this direct selling. Door-to-door selling is still around, still popular in some countries such as China, but it's declining in the United States. Now, why do you think that is? Well, part of the problem is when you ring the doorbell, nobody's home. We've got two-income households that have become the norm, so fewer people are there, and when they are there, they may be resistant to answer the door for security reasons. At-home shopping parties, we also call this in-home selling. A sales presentation is made to a group of people who've gathered in the home of a friend. You've probably either thrown one of these parties or maybe been invited to one and been offered the opportunity to buy Tupperware or cookware through Pampered Chef, maybe baskets, maybe toys, all kinds of things. Multi-level marketing, also known as network marketing, is a system in which a master distributor recruits other people to become distributors. The most famous of these being Amway. Some of you may have given this a try. You almost certainly have received a pitch from a friend. Let's talk about this in class, about the pros and cons of this way of supplementing your income. Have you ever thought of vending machines as retailing? Well, they really fit into this category of non-store retailing. I'd be interested in hearing what some of the interesting items are that you've seen and perhaps purchased in a vending machine before. So, of course, the hot non-store kind of retailing that we need to give attention to is B2C, or business to consumer, e-commerce. Forrester Research projects that e-commerce is going to grow to $370 billion by 2017. Experts are predicting by that year that 60% of all U.S. retail sales will at least involve the web in one way or the other. And so we talk about web influence sales, which we believe will increase to 1.8 trillion. So that means some of those will actually be purchased on the web, but others will be purchased in a store after someone has done some research on the web. So I think the retailers today, we're finding that they're realizing that it's not necessarily going to be an either-or, either on the web or in the store, but it's probably going to be a both. So be ready to discuss the pros and cons of B2C e-commerce, both from your standpoint as a consumer, but also from the standpoint of being a marketer or a retailer. Okay, let's shift gears from retailing and let's talk about a special kind of marketing, the marketing of services. Services are a part of a broad category of intangibles, services and other experience-based products that can't be touched. Services are acts or efforts or performances that are exchanged from producer to user without any kind of ownership rights. The service industry accounts for 4 out of every 5 jobs in the U.S. and nearly 80% of gross domestic product. Services are targeted toward both consumers and also toward organizations, like in a B2B setting. The intangibility of services creates some unique opportunities, but also some big challenges for us as marketers. Of course, many services actually combine experiences with physical goods as part of the delivery of that service. For example, a lot of movies are still seen in theaters, and so theater seats and the sound system are some physical goods that complement the delivery of the movie experience. All services, however, share 4 key characteristics. The first of these is intangibility. We talked about this. You can't see it, touch it, or smell it. This means that services can't be inspected or tried prior to the purchase, which makes it a lot more difficult to evaluate the services offered by different providers. Contrary to what the Progressive insurance lady says, you can't pick up a box of insurance off of the counter and study it. It's intangible. Marketers then have to rely on physical cues to reassure the buyer that they're buying a good quality service. Cues might include things like the look of the facility where the service is performed, its furnishings, the lighting, the cleanliness, the employee appearance, the website, or certainly the advertising. Another characteristic is perishability. Services can't be stored for later sale or consumption. They have to be used at the time they're available. For example, there are just so many appointment periods in a doctor's day. An empty slot that's not used at 8 a.m. can't be, put in the back room and be saved and used later. Another characteristic is variability. Even the same service performed by the same person will vary when it's delivered on different days or at different times. And so if the person's just having a bad day or they don't have enough focus, they may not provide the same level of service that they would at another time. Explicit standards and operating procedures can also help to minimize variability, while things like using mystery shoppers and doing customer feedback surveys can help to improve and monitor service. And then the final characteristic is what we call inseparability. Because services have to be experienced to be used, it's impossible to separate the production of a service from its consumption. Now here's an important term to remember, and that's servicescape. The physical elements of the facility where the service is performed. This includes things like the design of the exterior, also the design of the interior spaces, as well as things like ambient conditions like lighting and background music. We give a lot of attention to those. Servicescapes can strongly affect the way that we perceive the quality even before we've ever received the service. However, there's some services that come to the customer instead of relying on the customers to come to them. These could be things like leak detection services or plumbers or fencing companies, locksmiths. So instead, when that happens, customers might look toward things like the vehicle the service provider is driving. Is it dented? Is it dirty? Does it have a logo on it? That kind of thing. Is it well maintained? So while services can't be touched, there's still plenty of physical elements that affect the customer's evaluation of the services that we provide. Now, quality is a very important thing, whether we're selling intangible services or whether we're selling physical products. But it's really important with services, as it's the major way that customers evaluate the value that they're getting. There's several ways that businesses evaluate the level of service that they're providing. One of these is a measurement scale called ServQual. short for service quality. It's a popular instrument to measure service quality. Gap analysis is another approach. It's a measurement tool where we assess a gap between a customer's expectation of service quality and what actually occurs. And then we have the critical incidents technique, which does essentially a case analysis of a specific service encounter to see what worked and what didn't work. Now, our broad term of intangibles marketing also includes not just services, but other kinds of marketing. People, places, and ideas. Have you ever thought about that we actually market people? Well, we certainly do. When you think about what an agent does with an actor or what we do with politicians. You're certainly seeing plenty of political marketing that goes on with TV ads now. And so we not only do we use promotion, where we do a lot of advertising in these cases, but we can also change the product itself. Think of things like wardrobe makeovers, or even in some cases actors may get facelifts. It used to be very common for people to change their names before getting into show business. We don't see that as much as it happened in the past. And then we've got a category we call place marketing, and this is where we try to reach tourists, meeting planners, convention association or trade show planners, business travelers, and corporate travel agents to let them know that our state or our city is a great place to visit or to hold hopefully a big meeting or convention. So in class I'll show you some examples of some of the branding and promotion that cities do. And then finally, we can even market ideas. Now, with ideas, there's no physical product or service here. This is all about selling a concept or an idea. If you've watched political advertising, you're very familiar with this idea. Idea marketing is about gaining market share for a concept, a philosophy, a belief, or an issue. And the marketing of ideas can be even more difficult than marketing even goods or services. So what are some of the organizations that market ideas? Well, one of them is the church. We've got the best set of ideas around as the Christian church. But there can be some challenges in marketing in a Christian organization. I'd like to get your thoughts about what some of the challenges are. Perhaps you've been involved in doing some marketing at your church or another Christian organization. Let's talk about what those challenges are and how we can appropriately use marketing in this space. So retailing is an important part of consumer marketing. It's changing in dramatic ways, but it still can be a great place to plug into the marketing process. Many of you may decide to get involved in this part of the marketing world if you haven't already. The marketing of intangibles, whether it's services, people, places, or ideas, is a growth area for marketing professionals. It offers some exciting opportunities and challenges. So be thinking about some examples that you can share to illustrate the concepts that we've discussed in this module. Good luck on the quiz, and we'll look forward to seeing you in class.